many changes, and just a lot of just in general client work. We've had a handful of clients sign on over the past couple of months, and just making sure they're all taken care of. Our current clients are taken care of too, and just trying to stay as in the present moment as possible, and try not to put like too much work on my plate and too many things and tasks I need to do, but also obviously, doing as much as I can to, help you all. So I'm back. Hopefully we'll be able to keep these going consistently every single week because I do really miss coming on here and talking with you guys. But some big changes. Got this mole removed on my face, which, is really exciting. Definitely feels so much better having that big mole removed. It's been something that I've just had for as long as I remember. And I've been so self conscious about it for so long. And now that it's off, I do feel a lot better, but I do also find myself sometimes like forgetting that I got it removed and still kind of feeling a little bit insecure, like when someone's looking at my face, because I like kind of subconsciously think it's there. So it's a weird thing, which maybe I'll talk about in a podcast too, because I can definitely see how that relates to our fat loss and weight loss goals and body composition once we've lost weight and so on. But just got off of a really awesome conversation with a one-on-one client too today. It was an hour-long call actually, talking about her progress, which there were so many good golden nuggets in this conversation that I think I'm going to film a separate video about this, sometime soon, about the conversation we had, because I think it will benefit you all on the other side of this. It will benefit also all of our clients to hear about what we talked about too. But today, I want to dive into how to crush your goals over the 4th of July weekend without sabotaging your results while also enjoying your life too, right? Because this is a question I get all the time from clients: is how do I navigate the holidays when they pop up, things like this, holiday weekends, and not sabotage my results? And a lot of times it's a lot more simple than what you think. You think this one day or one week it can really ruin things, but in the grand scheme of things, if you are consistent the other 5 or 6 days of the week, other than the holiday, and going forward after the holiday weekend, you get right back on track of your normal routine and, consistently hit that week in and week out. These holidays, you could really just go absolutely nuts, honestly. And it's probably not going to actually impact your progress too much. But I know we don't like that feeling where we feel like we went too far off the deep end and we, step on the scale Monday morning and it is up. We don't like that feeling either. So I get the concern and the question and the worry of, okay, how can I still stay on track closely over the weekend, but still enjoy myself? So I'm going to kind of talk about two scenarios. One is if you're the type of person who is logging your food and you plan to track your food intake, or at least partially track your food intake on the 4th of July, let's say Saturday, right? Here's how I'd approach that. I'm also going to talk about if you are somebody who does not track your food at all, how to potentially approach that too. But with that being said, if you are somebody who's not tracking your food at all and you have consistent fat loss and weight loss goals you want to achieve, I would recommend that's probably something you do. That way you can control your results better on any other given day. But with that being said, let's dive in, because I do have to go get my haircut here in about 20-ish minutes. I got to leave. So let's roll through it. So if you are somebody who's tracking your food and you have a specific calorie number that you are aiming for, realize that if you are in a fat loss phase, aiming for your fat loss range of calories is probably not the smartest move on the 4th of July, because you're going to have some extra temptations. You're going to want to live a little bit more flexibly. Take the 4th of July, Saturday, and remove expectations of sticking with your fat loss range of calories. Now, if you're a one-on-one client, typically how we do fat loss phases is you will have 5 or 6 days of the week that are our fat loss range of calories that are a little bit lower, that achieve the fat loss we're looking for. And you have 1 or 2 days that are a little bit higher in our maintenance range. Make Saturday, the 4th of July, a maintenance day. Don't put the expectation on yourself that you are going to stick to your fat loss range of calories, because it's just going to be probably unrealistic. So one thing is obviously having the right expectations. It's going to be a maintenance day. The other days of the week, we can shoot for fat loss in that range. But 4th of July, that holiday, when you have that celebration, it's going to be a maintenance day. So that's first and foremost. So you have your maintenance level of calories. Now, one thing that we want to remember is like, we can plan ahead as much as possible and budget our calories ahead as much as possible to set ourselves up for success and go into a situation with a rough game plan, feeling confident of what to put on your plate. So we have some like structure and guidelines. Doesn't mean in the moment we can ever deviate slightly from those guidelines. No, like we don't want to live super rigidly, especially on a holiday. But going into that with a rough game plan helps us to have a little bit of an anchor. It's almost like if, you're going Christmas shopping and you go into Target or whatever store you do your Christmas shopping and you don't have any kind of Christmas list, you're way more likely to probably spend way more money than what you want to because you don't have a budget. You don't know exactly what you're going to buy. So you're like, oh, this looks nice. That looks nice. That looks nice too. Let me get all this stuff. But if you go into that store with an actual list and a specific budget, sure, you might deviate a little bit if you find, oh, like they have, this toy instead of that one, which this one's a little bit better, but you're going to be more likely to stick to it because you've written out what the rough game plan is going to be. Same thing goes for these situations. So think about what foods are likely going to be at the 4th of July cookout or barbecue, whatever you want to call it, that you're probably going to have. I was talking with another client yesterday. She asked me this question and I gave her basically all these tips that I went over that I'm going to go over in this video here. And she came back and was like, wow, like this was actually more simple than I thought. And, the good thing is I actually am hosting it. So I have control over most of the food that's going to be there. So I'm like, perfect. So that allows us to roughly track and log what we want to eat, right? And, think about what's typically available at these 4th of July get-togethers when you have met up with these family members or friends in the past. You're probably going to have some burgers, maybe some hot dogs that are going to be there. There's maybe going to be a potato salad, fruits, maybe some salad, maybe some potato chips, maybe cookies. Those are all things that are going to be there. We can plug that into our food log ahead of time. Go into Saturday's food log and start plugging that in. Plug in, what a typical size burger would be, which 5 ounces is a good rough estimate. Log 5 ounces of 85% lean ground beef. So you're logging a 5-ounce burger, right? And 85% lean is a good average to log. Now, if you're somebody who you are buying the meat, you can buy like extra lean ground beef, like 90, 93%, which is even better. But a good estimate, if like someone else is the one bringing the beef and cooking it, 85 is a good rough ballpark to choose there. So log 5 ounces of 85 lean ground beef for your burger, right? Log a typical hamburger bun, which is going to be probably around 150 calories. Log, 3 tablespoons of ketchup. Log maybe like half a cup of potato salad. Log maybe 10 potato chips that you plan to put on your plate. Log a cup of watermelon or a cup of blueberries. And now you're starting to put your plate together and you can see where these calories maybe add up. And then you can kind of get a gauge of, okay, the potato salad's pretty high in calories. I'd rather have potato chips. Let me have maybe 15 potato chips and just take off the potato salad because you're like, yeah, I like potato salad, but do I need to have it? Probably not. And you could start to make those realistic trade-offs, just like, when you're budgeting your Christmas list and you're adding things up, you're like, yeah, do we really need to get like, Aiden, our son, this toy when he already has a toy that's really close to it? Probably not. And then you can make those trade-offs to save some money here, save some calories here, quote unquote, and, be able to use those calories or that money in another place. So that's like first and foremost, log that stuff ahead of time. And you can log, okay, let me see. I know this person's bringing chocolate chip cookies. Someone else said they're bringing cupcakes. Let me see how many calories are in these things and see if I can afford to have both, or maybe I need to pick and choose one. But when you start to plan that ahead of time, you can go into that day, that meal with your friends, family, like I said, with a rough game plan. And then you can confidently put that stuff on your plate and know, okay, this is going to be roughly 800-ish calories. And then, now I'm getting to my next point, you budget that into your total calories for the day. And then you can plan your breakfast and your lunch or whatever that other meal is around that. So if you know that your total calories around maintenance are around 1900 or 2000, let's say, you plug in, that plate you plan to have for the 4th of July, it comes out to 800 calories. Now you have 1200 calories roughly for the rest of the day. And you can log, okay, I can have, maybe a 600 calorie breakfast and a 600 calorie lunch. Let me log my typical yogurt, my whole grain bread, or my oatmeal, whatever it may be, whatever you typically would have for breakfast, put that in and see how it fits there. Same thing goes for lunch. But when you budget that stuff ahead of time, now you know exactly what you're going to have for breakfast, exactly what you're going to have for lunch. And then okay, this is roughly what I'm going to have for my cookout dinner or my 4th of July meal. I know it's going to put me in that 1900 to 2000 calorie range, and that's going to be good for me. And now it's just about sticking as closely as possible to that game plan. Obviously, if you go into that 4th of July meal and you decide to have like 4 cupcakes and go way overboard or have things you didn't account for, yeah, it's going to throw us off, but you're at least going in there with, a rough strategy of what to do versus going in there blind, and it makes the world a difference versus going in blind. I can't stress that enough. So that's how I would approach it if you're going to like roughly log that day. If you plan to maybe not log that meal at all, it's still worth logging your breakfast and lunch, the meals around that day, and then maybe just leaving a 800 to 1,000 calorie budget open for that meal. So some clients, they don't even want to roughly even like log that 4th of July meal even ahead of time, which is fine if you choose that, right? You just have to be okay with, okay, I'm taking less control of what I'm eating. So maybe my result is going to be a little bit different. But if you don't want to log that other meal at all, what you can do is just leave a like 800 to 1,000 calorie budget open for that day. And let's say, in that other example, your calorie goal is 2,000 at maintenance. Subtract 1,000 from that. So now you have 1,000 left over for breakfast and lunch. Log your breakfast and lunch. Try to hit probably 2/3 of your protein intake for the day between those two meals. Try to make those two meals really heavy in fruits and vegetables just to account for, okay, if I'm having this 4th of July celebration, maybe I'm going to have a drink or two. Maybe I'm going to have some more dessert. Maybe I'm not going to choose as many fruits and vegetables. Emphasize those at your other meals. Leave 1,000 calories left over. That doesn't give you the quote unquote permission, I guess, or the flexibility to binge for your 4th of July weekend meal. But it does leave a decent calorie window where, hey, if I'm mindful and I emphasize on my plate putting, lean beef, a bunch of fruits and vegetables on there, maybe a fourth of my plate be some kind of carbohydrate side that I want, and pick just one dessert to have, you're probably going to stay within that 1,000 calorie window for the most part. So that's another way where you're kind of not fully tracking and fully estimating the whole day, but you're tracking 2/3 of the day, which I think is a great strategy for a lot of people to take too. I think if you're a total beginner to tracking your food, it's worth estimating the whole day, even that meal. If you are more experienced with tracking your food, I think leaving that meal untracked and just leaving that kind of 1,000 calorie window is a good, middle ground strategy. Now, if you're somebody who is not logging your food at all. Like I said, if you are aiming for fat loss, you probably should be logging your food. That's the most efficient way to go about it, in my opinion. There are just so many variations of how many calories can be in certain things where if you are not logging your food, you're just putting so much out of your control. If you're somebody who really wants to save money for a vacation, you probably should be tracking your finances and budgeting. So, but if you are somebody who is not tracking your food at all, a good rule of thumb when you are, having a meal like this is to think about your plate in 3 puzzle pieces. So the first puzzle piece makes up about 1/3 of your plate, and that is your kind of lean protein source. So in this case, with a 4th of July barbecue, you might not have the leanest protein sources available unless someone made grilled chicken. If they do, that's awesome. Go with that. But if it's just burgers and hot dogs, they might not be the leanest, but they do have some protein. Make about a fourth to maybe up to 1/3 of your plate be some kind of combination of hot dog and hamburger. Now, that's not counting the bun. That's just counting the actual meat, right? But a fourth or maybe up to 1/3 of your plate be that. Now, the second component of our plate that we want to be about 1/3 of our plate to maybe up to a half of our plate is some kind of fruit or vegetable. So this could be a big salad on half of our plate. This could be a fruit salad, which would be great too. Berries, watermelon is fantastic for this. Strawberries, that would be the other half of your plate roughly. So now you have a fourth to maybe 1/3 of your plate, protein, half of your plate, a combination of fruits and vegetables. Now, if you're having a salad, be really mindful of how much salad dressing you're using. I recommend having the salad dressing on the side and either slightly dipping your salad in the dressing, or you could dip your fork in the dressing and then, grab your bite of salad. And that's a way to get a little taste of dressing with each bite, but you're not actually pouring it on there. So be mindful of that, because you can definitely rack up a ton of extra calories from, your vegetable salad with the dressing on there. But even better yet, you can get some very low calorie dressings and take it with you to the party and use that. And that's a great strategy. A little side note, before I get back to the puzzle piece and the plate, there's this brand called Skinny Girl, and they have awesome Caesar dressing that I think tastes great, and it is so few in calories. I think it might be like 10 calories per serving or something. When normal Caesar dressing, I think is like at least 100. So like 10 times less the calories, super good. You could almost pour that on and like not have to worry about your calories for it. But so if you this is where like bringing your own stuff can really come into play too. Bringing your own low calorie chips or lean ground beef burgers, bringing the low calorie salad dressing can help. But half of our plate be some kind of combination of fruit or vegetables. And then that last remaining roughly a fourth of our plate is where we like get our carbohydrate from. So what this could look like is maybe you have a burger and maybe a hot dog, and you have your half of your plate, fruits and vegetables, maybe a salad with very little dressing. And then with the burger, maybe you have a bun with a burger, and that takes up your one fourth of your carbohydrate plate, and then maybe the hot dog you have without a bun. And that's your plate. And that's a pretty solid balanced plate to have. And if you were to calculate the calories for that, it's not going to be too high in calories if you don't go too crazy with adding in a bunch of salad dressings. You aren't adding a ton of crazy high calorie sauce to, your burgers and things. And like if you have a burger that's maybe 5 ounces, that's maybe, let's say 200 calories. You have a hot dog that's maybe 150 calories, let's say. So now you're up to 350. You have one bun, probably 150 calories. Now you're up to 500. You have fruits and vegetables with maybe a little bit of salad dressing. Now you're up to maybe add, let's say, 150 calories to that. Maybe you're at like 650 calories for that plate. Maybe 50 calories worth of like ketchup or something on your burger and with your hot dog. Maybe you're up to 700. 700 calorie plate at a celebration isn't like too crazy, right? It's close to that 800 to 1,000 calorie window that I do recommend kind of saving for these types of meals, and kind of, like I said, backtracking the rest of your meals around that. And then that also leaves you, 200 calories worth to maybe have like one chocolate chip cookie on the side. And that's a decent plate that, you're getting some fruits and vegetables, you're getting some lean protein, you're enjoying yourself, and you're not going too crazy. Where people go wrong with this is they'll have like a burger, and then that half of their portion of their plate that should be fruits and vegetables is basically just like mac and cheese, potato salad, all these really high calorie, high fat, high sauce things. And then they'll have like 2 or 3 desserts on top of that, along with having maybe like 2, 3, or 4 drinks, alcohol drinks on top of it. And that's another avenue where people rack up a ton of extra calories is through that alcohol. Now, if you're going to have that stuff, one day or one meal, like I mentioned before, is not going to make or break your results as long as you understand, hey, I might feel a little bit bloated the next morning, but as long as I get back to my normal routine, do that consistently for, the next few days, the bloating is probably going to go down. My body weight's probably going to come back down to normal for the most part. And if I stack up multiple days and weeks of being consistent afterwards, before the next holiday, I'm still going to see great progress long term. But if you want a strategy for not tracking your food at all, even the whole day, and how to put together the plate, a burger with a bun, maybe a hot dog on the side with no bun, and then the other parts of your plate, fruits, vegetable, salad, and maybe one dessert. I mean, that's a solid breakdown to go with. And there are other combinations of this too. If you are somebody who doesn't really need a bun at all for your burger, and you'd rather have your carbohydrate source of your plate, that one fourth of your puzzle piece of your plate, you'd rather have that be, let's say, mac and cheese, then don't have the bun for the burger or the hot dog. Have a little bit of mac and cheese on the side and replace it with that. So you can mix and match these things depending on what your preference is. Or maybe instead of mac and cheese, it's 10 to 15 potato chips as your side. But use that framework and those puzzle pieces, and also listen to your hunger. Eat slowly, eat mindfully, enjoy every bite. Don't rush through eating it. Savor every bite that you are having. Enjoy yourself in the moment, and think about your fullness. It's another strategy I tell clients on a scale of 1 to 10. Eat slowly, because if you just scarf down all your food, you're not going to be able to gauge your fullness properly. But eat slowly and stop when you're at around 7 on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you do that, you're probably going to leave a little bit of space in your stomach, which means you're probably not overdoing the calories. Usually, we kind of know when we overdid the calories on a day like this. Our fullness level is like at a 10. We need to like take our pants off, or if we're wearing jeans, if it's like Thanksgiving, we have to unbuckle our pants, whatever it may be. We usually know when we overdo it. When we usually know when, hey, we left a little bit of space in our stomach, we probably, ate more modestly. Aim for that 70-ish% fullness mark while eating slowly. And if you do all those things, you're gonna be fine, especially if you're consistent the other days of the week. So hopefully this was simple enough and made sense. Obviously, we could always get into more specifics, but like that's a really rough game plan that you're going into the day with some structure, a little bit more structure if you're gonna, log that stuff, pre-track it beforehand, a little bit more structure, but a little bit less with tracking just 2/3 of your day, and then a little bit even less structure if you're not tracking at all the whole day. But it allows you to still have the flexibility to, but to not overdo it. So hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one.